only one day after we learned that President Joe Biden had struck a deal with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to install an anti-abortion federal judge in Kentucky. That's right, a federal judge, meaning it's a lifetime appointment. Biden's now saying that he would like to see a carve-out in the legislative filibuster in the Senate in order to codify reproductive rights through legislation. That would be fantastic, except he knows that's not gonna happen. Saying things is one way to go about it. Fighting for what you're saying is something entirely different. He's not gonna fight for that. And we have another update, which we'll get to in just a second. But first, let's go to this video featuring Joe Biden, our feckless, weak, pathetic president, speaking at a NATO summit. Let's watch.
I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law. And the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action.
Now, Biden also called for a carve out in the filibuster specifically for the voting rights bill. And I give you that context so you can know what to expect after he made this very strong statement at the NATO summit, right? He loves to talk, but he never fights for his agenda. He never fights for what he claims to be supportive of, including the Build Back Better agenda. He was definitely willing to separate out the public infrastructure from the social spending components of his own agenda to ensure its failure later, and it did fail. He said this when it came to voting rights, and of course, there was no exception made for the voting rights bill. He just said what he wanted. He knew people wanted him to say, what people wanted to hear, but he didn't fight for it. And look, he just wants to talk and then go back to his nap. His nice, long, peaceful nap while the rest of us suffer the consequences of having no one in the White House represent us. As our rights are rolled back, he's over there at a NATO summit saying, yeah, maybe there should be a carve out for the filibuster. I mean, I've been the filibuster's #1 defender because of course it's a convenient excuse for why Democrats can't get a damn thing accomplished. But let me just tell people what they want to hear and say there should be a carve out for reproductive rights, but of course he's not gonna fight for it, so no cookies for him. Now, Biden's previous call for a filibuster exception for voting rights legislation failed to gain traction because he didn't fight for it. All 50 Democrats would need to support the change, and Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have expressed concerns about altering the filibuster. In fact, in response to what Joe Biden said during the NATO summit, I mean, it's perfect, right? He could always rely on his good friend Kyrsten Sinema. She said, no, I would not agree to a carve out in order to codify Roe v. Wade, to codify reproductive rights. That's what Kyrsten Sinema, who ran as a progressive, is doing because that corporate cash is so sweet. And if you chip away at that filibuster, oh my God, maybe in the future they do away with it, meaning that Democrats wouldn't have a convenient excuse to fail in passing legislation that their corporate donors are not in favor of.
Okay, so what does it mean to fight for it? Because we often say that, and in Washington they're like, have one of two reactions to this. One is aghast, how you shouldn't fight for anything, you should be civil. Take your losses and just go crawl in a cave like sleepy Joe Biden, and they'll love you in Washington, right? Or the other reaction, they're like, what's that for, just venting? Oh, progressives aren't practical at all. No, practical politics is carrots and sticks. Otherwise, you're doing literally nothing, right? So one thing you could do is you could say, hey, you know what? I really want this voting rights or women's rights bill so bad that I'm willing to give you carrots, Manchin, Sinema. What do you need? You're both prostitutes for donors, so you want me to get you $20 million in donor money. Since you're prostitutes, and not for your body, but for your votes, I'll get you money. I'll get you 20 million, I'll get you 200 million. What do you need? Because I can't have abortion be illegal. You know it's illegal in Michigan right now, today as we speak? They passed a law decades ago, and it went into effect immediately as soon as Roe was overturned. So people can't get abortions all across the country now. What kind of bribe do you need? So that would be a carrot. A stick would be, hey, listen, you're not voting for me on anything, right? You're not on Build Back Better, not on voting rights, not on women's rights. You're not voting with me on anything. In fact, the story that Anna started with, Biden did a secret deal with Mitch McConnell. He gave Mitch McConnell a horrible right-wing anti-abortion judge. We don't know what he got in return. My likely guess is 0 because he's Biden and he's a moron. His entire career has given Mitch McConnell the greatest deals on earth because he's actually a Republican anyway. But ostensibly the deal is, hey, loosen your tight grip on federal nominations.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute, why would you need that if you had Sinema and Manchin on your side? Because whenever I ask a Democrat, what the hell do we need Sinema and Manchin for? How are they a Democrat if they're blocking literally every single Democratic priority? And their fallback answer is, oh, no, you don't know, secretly, other federal judges, they're really helping us. Really? Because Biden just had to do a deal with McConnell, because apparently Manchin and Sinema aren't even helping on that. So that gives you room to put pressure on them and say, hey, you're not voting with me anyway, so you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take that $20 or $200 million, because Biden has unlimited access to the donors, and I'm gonna give it to your primary opponent. That's called political pressure. I'm gonna drive down your polling numbers by doing the bully pulpit. Biden has done none of that, none, 0. You know why? Because he doesn't care. So this is just window dressing.
100%. All it is, all right, look. By the way, I don't think it was a mistake that Biden made that statement a day after we learned the truth about that secret deal that he struck with Mitch McConnell. People are upset, they should be upset. Of course, you have the typical moderates and centrists, really corporate Democrat enablers on Twitter trying to provide cover for what Biden's doing. I mean, on one hand, he talks about, oh, it's so important that we protect women's reproductive rights. On the other hand, he's installing judges who will enjoy a lifetime federal judgeship and have a record of fighting against reproductive rights. That is what Biden's doing behind closed doors. And you have all these moderates and centrists providing cover for that. I mean, whose side are you on? What's the point in getting Democrats elected if they're just gonna carry out the same garbage that we see from the right wing? And then they turn around, they accuse us of wanting Republicans in office. No, actually, I want the opposite. I would like Democrats to stop posing as Democrats and stop enabling the worst Republicans in this country, including Mitch McConnell. If you're defending Biden, chumming it up with Mitch McConnell, you ain't on the right team. Sit down.
Okay.
And one other thing I want to mention, it's a convenient time for Biden as well, because it's one thing to say you want to carve out for the filibuster. It's another thing to refuse to fight for it. And then there's something else that drew some attention. This is a tweet from Jordan Zacharin. He writes, I'm sure it was bad timing, but woof, Biden calling for a filibuster carve out now that Patrick Leahy is hurt and Democrats only have 49 senators for the foreseeable future is rough.
It doesn't matter. He would have never called, if he thought it could work, he wouldn't have called for it. Okay,
totally. I agree.
So every reporter that tells you otherwise is just doing defense for him. All right, but I want to go to Reuters that actually wrote a really great piece about this. One of the things that happened was 30 Democratic senators wrote a letter to Biden asking for bold action. And they said, don't you have a plan for fighting back against Roe v. Wade? And Reuters explains, but the White House is pursuing a more limited set of policy responses while urging voters and Congress to act. Biden and officials are concerned that more radical moves would be politically polarizing ahead of November's midterm elections, undermining public trust in institutions like the Supreme Court. You idiot, we don't trust the Supreme Court. Asking us to trust it more is dumb. They did Citizens United, they overturned Roe v. Wade, they overturned gun laws in New York. Politically polarizing moron. You are the head of the Democratic Party. The other party's the Republican Party. You're supposed to fight them. No, he's actively trying to find a way to help his Republican friends under the guise of, I wouldn't want to be politically polarizing by fighting them. Limited policy options.
He's so pathetic. The Democratic Party is an embarrassment. And as our rights are being stripped away from us as we speak, they're sitting in their ivory towers, feeling offended that we would dare criticize the lack of leadership that we're experiencing right now in the face of religious zealots in this country who want to force their religious beliefs on all of us, including controlling our bodies, controlling our relationships, controlling who we're intimate with in the bedroom, how we're intimate with our partners in the bedroom. They're absolute creeps, and we have no one protecting us from the desires of these creeps and perverts who spend all their time obsessing over our personal lives. Okay, by the way, that same Reuters piece gives us some more details. For instance, the White House has knocked down talk for some lawmakers to protect abortion access on federal lands, arguing that it would have too many unintended consequences. Oh wow, what are the unintended consequences? Very curious about that. The White House is worried the federal government wouldn't be able to keep them safe on or off the property, two sources explained. What the hell does that even mean? The federal government with its unlimited resources for other countries, like any other country, unlimited resources in terms of foreign aid, in terms of military weaponry. We really want to keep Ukrainians safe. But when it comes to Americans who need safe access to abortion, the federal government doesn't have the capacity to do that? Not buying it, not buying it. There's more. What about reforming SCOTUS, right? What about doing something about the Supreme Court? Privately, Biden has expressed skepticism about a wide range of Supreme Court reform proposals, including restricting the court's power, setting term limits for justices, and strengthening ethics and transparency rules. Wow, even strengthening ethics and transparency rules is a bridge too far for Sleepy Joe. Let me continue. And this is according to a person involved in the conversations weeks prior to the most recent Supreme Court decision. And at that time, it was Roe v. Wade's reversal. And Cenk, he's shocked. He is shocked. Biden is amazed that members of the Democratic Party keep asking him, are you really planning to run for re-election in 2024? Because he's a disaster, but he's completely in the dark about it. So last two graphics here, Biden has been eager for signs of loyalty, and they have been few and far between because he's a failure. Facing intensifying skepticism about his capacity to run for re-election when he will be nearly 82, the president and his top aides have been stung by questions about his plans, irritated at what they see as a lack of respect from their party and the press, which by the way, the press provides cover for this loser day in, day out. Let's keep it real. Okay, I can't even believe that he's offended considering how friendly the press is to him. And determined to tamp down suggestions that he's effectively a lame duck a year and a half into his administration, he absolutely is. What has he accomplished? Tell me.
Yeah, guys, I told you that a long time ago that his administration was already over. The minute they didn't reform the filibuster, it was done. They can't pass a single thing. The only thing they could pass is something that is a Republican bill, because that's the only way to get Republican votes. So he might pass further Republican bills, and by the way, who's in charge? The Democrats have both House of Congress and the presidency. Does it look like it? We just lost Roe. We've lost voting rights. He's giving Mitch McConnell the most extreme judges that Trump did. The infrastructure bill was a Republican bill. The COVID relief bill, the Republicans also did. We literally got nothing Democratic done, nothing. Meanwhile, the Republicans made huge gains under Biden.
Under Biden.
And he can't figure it out. And guys, if you're wondering, like, no, they're kidding, right? I mean, or they're doing some sort of public pressure. No, they genuinely believe it. In Washington, they think it is the biggest affront. How dare you question the Democratic president, whether you're in the party or you're a member of the press. Look at the assumption built into that went into the New York Times, that it is offensive if the press questions a Democratic president.
Yep.
So that is their assumption. That's why they're flabbergasted. What is going on here? The president in his infinite weakness has been slightly criticized. Yeah, no, there are no rules, Biden. You're not getting it. We're not gonna sit there and go, oh, you did great things when you didn't do a goddamn thing. So sad day for you, cry all day long. Oh no, progressives are so mean. You know what they're using now? Last thing. By the way, I should also note, Manchester Cinema came out just before we got started on the show saying, no, of course we're not gonna reform the filibuster for women's rights. What do you think, it's the stock market? They both made an exception for the debt ceiling, because that would have affected the stock market and their personal money.
They love those carve-outs.
Yeah, but a carve-out for filibusters, they're like, we just don't care about women's rights. Cinema's like, I don't care.
They don't care
I
about
don't care.
anyone.
My donors don't want me to get rid of the filibuster.
They don't care about anyone, okay? They don't care about coal workers. They don't care about women, they don't care about gay people, they don't care about transgender people, they don't care about the environment, they don't care about anything other than what they can do to use their position of power to enrich themselves. When Cenk referred to them as prostitutes, he was correct. These people are whores for corporate money. That is it. Okay, Manchin, Sinema, and a whole host of other corporate politicians, both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. It's time to call a spade a spade. This is who these people are. They don't represent us. They're in positions of power specifically to collect that corporate money, to trade individual stocks based on insider information that no one else is privy to. They just want to enrich themselves. This system is set up to attract the absolute worst people in positions of power. And it is really, really hard to find a politician who is principled enough to withstand all of that pressure to be a corporate, disgusting goon in our government.
So the last thing I was gonna say about the presidential race is, in the New York Times article, Biden uses a really interesting reason why Democrats should get behind him for the presidency. His handlers say to the press, now remember, if Biden doesn't run, Kamala Harris is weak, so she might lose to someone from the left. Wait, isn't the Democratic Party supposed to be on the left? No, his best excuse is, now remember, if I step down, we might not have a right-wing Democrat win. Well, okay, there you have it. Perfect explanation for the current corrupt state of the Democratic Party. Anyone who doesn't understand the Democratic Party is completely corrupted by corporate donors, isn't paying attention, or is actively lying to you. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.